YouTube, what the crap's going on? HeirofCarthage back in Total War Warhammer. We're going to look a little bit more at the Norsca DLC. This DLC is free. I didn't mention much about the DLC itself. It is free if you pre-ordered Warhammer 2. If you don't want to pre-order a game, then obviously you can purchase it on its own. I'll have a link in the description if you want to go check it out. I didn't commit the price to memory. But yeah, it looks like a really fun DLC. So what you get is you get the Norsca Faction, and you also get to play them in campaign. So it's going to be pretty fun. Now, Norsca has a lot of new units, and rather than talk about every single unit, I kind of wanted to spend some time pointing out to you my 5 favorite units from the Norsca Faction so far. Now, my mind may change over time, and I'm curious to see what it is that you like most about Norsca. Now, I know you can't play it yet, but when it releases, you all might have to give me some more feedback as well. But right now, here's my favorite factions in the Norsca DLC. Or sorry, my 5 favorite units, not factions. So from a unit standpoint, Wulfric makes the top of my list. And this guy is a very interesting character in terms of his abilities. When he's not mounted, he may not seem like anything crazy off the outset because he doesn't have armor-piercing damage. But if you look, he's a melee expert, and he also has duelist, which means that he's not going to damage a ton of enemies at the same time, but it's going to make him very good against enemy lords. So this is actually very useful for him in campaign, and it makes him pretty deadly early on. Like, even when I'm playing the game in very hard, and Wulfric is fighting lords that statistically have an advantage on him, he does very well because of these traits right here. So armored and shielded gives him high melee defense. He's got very good melee attack, and he's got very good weapon damage, even if it's not all armor piercing. So Wulfric is an interesting one. And then if you throw this guy up onto a war mammoth, he now all of a sudden has over 10,000 hit points, 70 armor, 525 armor piercing damage with an anti-infantry bonus. So he goes from being this amazing duelist and fighting other lords and heroes on foot to all of a sudden becoming extremely good at breaking up blobs of infantry. He is very expensive on his War Mammoth if you bring his special items. Now, if you look at that one, that is 22% weapon damage buff, and for 2 minutes straight. That is a pretty strong buff. A really strong buff. It takes a while to cool down, but still, that makes Wulfric a pretty big danger for a long time. The Sea Fang ability is really good. It's like Wind of Death. You get to use it twice in a battle, and it doesn't cost magic. So very, very good. And then Hunter of Champions lasts for 24 seconds. It can be targeted on any enemy that's 100 meters in range. And it takes away 60 melee defense, 48 speed, and 30 armor. Imagine using this on a charging flying lord. You would basically negate a ton of the damage off their charge and take away a ton of their melee defense. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that could be really good at slowing down a slippery Fey Enchantress or other units. So I think Wulfric is going to have some very, very cool, unique abilities to add. So that's why he makes the first on my list of favorite units. The next one is this Famir Balefiend. I don't know the lore behind this dude, or these guys, what a Famir is per se, but he looks kind of like a dinosaur in some ways, on 2 feet. But if you look at this is a spellcaster. Now, he's an expensive spellcaster, very expensive. But there's 2 versions of him, one in the lore of fire and another in the lore of shadows. I really like the one in the lore of shadows. Not to say the one that's fire isn't good, but let's look at the abilities on this guy. So he comes with so-so armor at about 65, so it's not bad, but it's not great. His leadership is solid. Speed is good at 54, so he gets around pretty quick. Offers magical attacks, which means that physical resistance won't work against this guy. And then armor sundering. So he takes 30 armor away from whatever it is he attacks, and he has armor piercing damage of 320. So this is a spellcaster that will actually be very dangerous up close to an enemy lord or another high armored, high value target because he's sundering off the armor and dealing massive damage. Now you'll notice it doesn't say duelist, so he's still going to do quite a bit of splash damage. Duelist is more indicating they're good 1-to-1, but if you combine that with the lore of shadows, something like the enfeebling foe, so now I can take away 34 melee attack and 36 defense. On top of the fact that this guy already armor sunders, he is going to be dangerous. Or then Occam's Mind Razor, which then gives this guy almost half again of his weapon damage, so he'll be up to almost 600 weapon damage, and even more armor piercing. So yeah, it's a pretty big deal. He's a big dude, he causes a lot of damage, and he sunders armor. Throw in the fact that he could drop a Pit of Shades somewhere or anything else. I think this easily makes a list. I'm going to love using one of these guys in campaign. Very, very cool unit. Hybrid melee spellcaster that's going to be a lot of fun. The next one I put on my list is these Marauder Champions with great weapons. I've done a little bit of testing with these guys, like head-to-head with Blackworks. They have a few more units models in each unit than Blackworks do. I think it's 75 instead of 60. So their stats are a little lower, and their armor is lower as well. Charge bonus is a little lower, but they have better weapon strength and are just about on par in melee attack. These guys pack a serious wallop, and they are not shielded like most great weapon units, so that's going to be one of the trade-offs. And their armor is a bit lower than some other elite tier infantry, but with this many unit models packing this kind of damage and armor piercing, this is going to be a pretty hard-hitting infantry, and it's going to give Norsca something to use both in multiplayer and in campaign to create a very nice elite unit in the army. The next unit I put in here is similar to the Balefiend, but this is the Famir Warriors with great weapons. These guys are similar to the Balefiend in the sense that they have magical and armor sundering attacks, but if you look here, it gets even better. Bonus versus large. So there's a 30 bonus versus large with 64 armor piercing on a unit that has 110 armor in and of itself, 5,300 hit points across 9 unit models. Not a great charge bonus, but it's okay, and all that anti-large bonus. These guys are going to be really, really good at helping to take down enemy lords. I could see these guys being a big danger to stuff like Demigryph Knights. The Demigryph Knights would get a good charge, but these guys sundering armor off an enemy unit while keeping their 110 armor, and then magical attacks, you know, Grail Guardians and other stuff like that, which are not good against high armor anyway, but, you know, you put them in this situation, they're getting hit with magical attacks, so the physical resistance doesn't help. This is a very interesting unit, and I think that most of us should probably be glad that Norsca doesn't have any healing, because these guys getting healed or a mammoth getting healed could be a pretty scary prospect. And speaking of mammoths, that's the last but not least entry. So mammoths have a few varieties. I picked the War Mammoth here because I think it's a nice trade-off. It's very expensive, but it comes with more armor than your Feral Mammoth, and still packs the same melee devastation. They are anti-infantry. You can see here that they have a 5 bonus versus infantry. Not anything huge, but it's there. And then they pack an armor-piercing wallop of it's 400. I mean, that is absurd. Huge anti-infantry, huge area of effect. These guys are devastating to both armored and unarmored infantry alike. Absolutely devastating. And this particular one causes terror as well. So you have a terror-causing, gigantic, armor-piercing, lumbering behemoth that has a ton of hit points. So that's why these guys are my favorite. I'm going to go get you a little bit of footage of these units in battle. You tell me what other units you're interested in seeing. I'll do my best to try and get you a look at some of the new Regiments of Renown, which I do have, or the other Norsca units. Like I said, tell me what you want to see. I'll see you on the battlefield with some footage. I'm not going to narrate it. I'm just going to give you all some sweet cinematics.